You've just tuned into Beyond Your Past, part of the Mental Health News Radio Network. Welcome back to Beyond Your Past. I'm your host, Matt Pappas, certified life coach specializing in overcoming anxiety and trauma recovery. And this podcast is all about helping you move forward from what holds you back. Each week you'll hear from coaches, clinicians, and advocates who've overcome tremendous odds and are now using their journey to inspire you throughout yours. This is your place to feel validated and encouraged as you take your life back and live free from your past. Are you ready? Let's do this. Greetings, everyone, and thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to tune into the show, and I hope that this episode inspires and encourages you on your own journey. Big shout out if you're listening to the podcast for the very first time. I hope that you'll enjoy it and perhaps check out some other past episodes as well. And for those who are regular listeners, you guys all rock. You're amazing, and I always appreciate the support so much. A big thank you to my incredible sponsors, inlpcenter.org, offering world-class online neurolinguistic programming and life coach training to people in over 70 countries. I'm honored to be able to receive my certifications from INLP Center and utilize their research and incredible training programs. And to Daily Recovery Support, interactive daily group calls in a safe atmosphere for survivors of complex trauma, equipping you with the skills and information you can use every single day in your healing journey. Learn more about this affordable resource and get signed up at cptsdfoundation.org. If you find these podcasts helpful, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. That would be awesome. So today, my special guest on the podcast is spiritual life coach, Reiki master teacher, author, and soul transformation therapist, Elizabeth Goddard. Liz joins me to talk about her work in these areas, and in particular, we discuss how soul transformation therapy works, the importance of healing the original wound in trauma recovery, not glossing over or minimizing red flags in all types of relationships, her work in Reiki both with people and animals, and much more. You can learn more about Liz's work, including her program for healing from emotional abuse called ROAR, which stands for Retreat, Ownership, Acknowledgement, and Realignment, and you can find all that information over on her website, reviveyoursoul.co.uk, and I'll be sure and put all this in the show notes. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this chat that Liz and I had, so let's join that conversation without further delay right now.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, so I'm a spiritual life coach. Work more intuitively than maybe a normal life coach would. I work with the person. I pick up emotions within people. So empathic as an empath. And I've sort of been drawn more to work with women, and I say women peculiarly because they are the ones that have been coming to me. I'm not, specifically if a guy turned up dealing with it, I wouldn't have an issue with that. But it just seems to be that women have been coming through. And when I've been training, and I train Reiki as well, Reiki master teacher, and that's when I noticed this pattern, and I'm really into patterns. So I noticed this pattern of these women that were coming to for training, and there was this cycle that I was completely aware of, and this cycle of abuse. And it just seemed to me, I just felt the universe was sort of trying to kick me and say, this is what you need to be doing. So that is why I've gone into the area of emotional abuse. It's something I've experienced, physical and emotional abuse, and it's devastating. And I know the trauma that it puts on the body, and what you go through, and the mental anguish that you can go through as well. So I was quite passionate with combining some of the work that I've done and some of the training that I've done, particularly with soul transformation therapy, and some work I did nearly 20 years ago with past life regression, and combining some techniques to actually remove the trauma. And actually my big passion is finding the original wound. So, and helping people guide them to get to that and remove that.
Excellent. I have several questions right off the bat. So usually the ratio of men that reach out for help versus women is like just vastly disproportionate. And
Yeah.
I'm always kind of curious as to your take as to perhaps why you feel that, more women are reaching out to you for help versus men.
Mine started with, as I said, through the Reiki training. I was training, and that these women were turning up, but it was one-on-one training. And as we were, I don't know whether you're aware of Reiki. It's a very gentle energy. And as we were working and talking and doing the course, this stuff was coming up for them, and we were in this one-to-one environment, so you're able to explore it a little bit more. And I tried not to go down this route, but it was just the stuff that was coming up as we were, as they were being attuned to the energy. So that, I presume, I don't know. I think there's this masculine thing that men have to be strong, and it's this not crying and that sort of thing. I don't know why they don't acknowledge it's going on, or they. Is it? I don't know. Maybe you're. I haven't got.
No, I mean, I have my own thoughts too, and I think it generally refers a lot to what you just alluded to. A part of it is being the tough guy, the man card, taking care of everybody else. Not wanting to get in touch with our feelings or emote at all. Certainly not cry. Right? I mean, so. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I think in this day and age with mental health, getting a lot more. I'm going to say media coverage or being out in social media more. I think there are a lot more guys that are, starting to open up more, but I believe that those old stigmas still kind of hang true of just kind of figuring out stuff on your own and kind of toughing it out.
Yeah, I was actually out during the summer at a barbecue talking to a friend, and he was saying that he knew a couple of people that were in that situation, and they've been through this cycle. So they are talking about it. It just seems to be that maybe they keep it in a male. I don't know the answer to this, but so I don't know. They obviously there is some talk maybe going on at a certain level. So it's just maybe it doesn't come to me. Maybe I am not the right person. Maybe they need a man that. That's what they need, is to go to a male coach or whoever to work through it. Maybe that's where the support comes.
Yeah, and that, of course, is definitely part of it. I think sometimes guys are more comfortable with perhaps a guy therapist, although of course when it comes to being a survivor of trauma, there are a lot of guys who fall into my category where when I first started to work with a therapist years ago, there was no way on God's green earth I was going to work with a guy. Like, that was just not going to happen. Really? So when I was looking, I specifically, let the agencies and stuff know. I'm like, I need to speak with a female, therapist or, professional rather than a guy. So, I think there's a lot that goes into it. And I think it's encouraging that more and more guys, of course, now are talking and seeking out help, and they're not ashamed anymore. But
yeah, I remember talking to one of my coaches a few years ago, a business coach that I was using. And obviously, coaching business goes over to, and that's what I used to do, like, business coaching versus life coaching. And it's all entangled. It's all, whatever affects your business, whatever's going on in your business affects your personal life, and vice versa. So, and I remember talking to my coach at the time, and I was saying to her that I'd listened to this amazing meditation, and it was all about the womb and the heart, and how the womb is exactly the same tissues and as the heart. So it's like the woman's second heart. And she was quite shocked that the person doing it was a man, and it was to do with trauma, and it was to do with, I think, like sexual abuse or something. And because men, if they've been abused by women, would have that fear, and I think vice versa. So it depends where the abuse has come from. So if it's a female that's abusing a man, maybe it's easier to go to a male. Does that
absolutely? Yes, it does. Yeah, I mean, The abuse that I experienced when I was younger came primarily at the hands of guys. So, for me to try and seek out the help of a male therapist, there was just no way in hell. Like it was not happening.
Totally. Yeah. So that sort of work, for me, maybe that's where it comes from. The fact that if these men have experienced this emotional abuse, so this friend that I was talking to was saying, if it's come at the hands of a woman, they're not going to come to a woman. I'm saying they're not, but perhaps they wouldn't come down that route.
Yep. I could not agree more. So you are a spiritual life coach and a Reiki master, and then you mentioned about soul transformation therapy, which my niece is actually a Reiki practitioner. I believe she's going for her master's as well. So I'm familiar with that, and we can talk about that a bit. But I want to get into what exactly is soul transformation therapy.
Okay, so soul transformation therapy is a therapy that. So if I was working with you, it would be. I base it on it is based on emotions. So there would be something that's coming up for you that it's keeping you stuck or is causing you, an issue at this point in time. And what we would do is we'd find where that core. Exactly what's going on and where that comes from. And then what I actually do is I get you to feel the emotion. I find the story around it. And then I've combined it slightly with something else that I do, but it's finding the story and where it actually comes from and the emotion and where you're holding it in the body. And then I take people back. You felt this before. So at the moment as an adult, you're feeling it, but you've actually felt this before. It might be you've felt it once before, it might be 5 times or 10 times. I've done this with quite a few people and sometimes it's 1 or 2. And then other people have had they're at 16, there were loads of times it happened. I remember one lady I worked with and then at 8 and 5. And I go back to the youngest time that you can remember feeling that. I mean, each time we look at the story, what was going on at that time. And we track it down in the body and find where that emotion is lodged. That's where we store our emotions. These emotional traumas are held in our body. So and then we remove it. And that's what I do. And at each point, I get people to bring that child back in. And that's something that happened when I wrote my book. I literally just trained doing soul transformation, and within about 6 weeks I did some work on myself, and I found myself at the age of 26 I'd sort of left my body. There's part of me left behind. So, and this is why I feel that when we're tracking down these original wounds, we can actually, by bringing everything back, make ourselves feel completely whole.
Yeah, so I would imagine just by hearing you describe the process of going back and finding out where that emotion is, and that probably has to be a very, for lack of a better term, very emotional, almost very kind of intense, I guess, time, right? I mean, I would imagine when you go and try and discover, that core emotion and where it comes from and what it's about and feel it again, it can be pretty intense for your clients, I would imagine, right?
Well, yeah, not as intense and emotional as you would think. It's not. It's as if you don't relive the whole scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understand. You're finding. So you've got an emotion that you're feeling, and you felt it before. And I'm just, and I say, what age is that? What age have you felt this before? And you might say, 8. And what is going on? I need to come. The emotional bit, actually, more emotional bit is actually I get my clients to speak to their child at that age, and that is the emotional bit. What did that child need to hear at that time? And that can be quite emotional. It's what you didn't get from the adults or the group of people that were supporting you at that age. That bit can be quite emotional, but it's not as painful as people think. It's not like going in and reliving a really traumatic experience.
Mm-hmm. I find that inner child work is some of the most, it can be some of the most difficult, but it's also some of the most rewarding and healing. And giving a voice to that child, or giving them now what they didn't get then,
Mhm.
just hugely helpful.
Mm. Yeah. And what we've, again, so we're going through this huge change at the moment. There is this massive upgrade going on at the moment, and what I'm trying to get over to people is that we live in a hypnotic state between the ages of 0 and 8. So if you've got children, my children are grown up, and I wish I'd known more about this, as they were growing up in that and going to, you live in a hypnotic state. So every single thing that they witness, that they hear, that, you might be come home from work in a bad mood, and they come running up to you, and to you, it's not a lot, might make a flippant remark, but to them that can be really painful and an abandoning, or there could be other so many of different emotions. But they are sponges, and they pick absolutely everything up, and they see, we are the biggest teachers, but they witness and they hear everything, and they take it on as the truth. They can't discern between what's right and wrong, what fits, and who's in a good mood and who's in a bad mood. They just take this on. They have done something, or in some way it's maybe their fault. And I think this is part of the big picture, and I think we're learning this. I totally believe the children come in, and we were children. We came in as teachers. Our children are here to teach us, and I'm in the UK. We've got brought up under very Victorian, guidelines, I suppose. And it's like the child should be seen and not heard. And, it's like, no, they know so much more. They haven't been subjected to all this negative thought patterns. They're innocent beings. So, I think we've got a lot to learn from children.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you give a voice to the inner child who has
Mm.
experienced so much, and
Mm.
and at least in my case, and so often, that child's voice was silenced or minimized for decades, and now all of a sudden you start to connect with that little boy or girl, and you're like, holy crap, this little person inside of me has a lot to say. And then you start to learn so much about yourself and how
Yeah.
you experienced, whatever the trauma was that you went through. And you become really, I mean, I found in the work that I've done just on myself and, talking with others, that it gives you such a deeper appreciation for, what you survived and how that
Mm.
child survived all this time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And mine was suppression of voice as well. So yeah, and there, it's still there. There's little
Mm-hmm.
bits, and it's like, no, you can. It's okay. It's like rechanging. Re no, it is safe. It is safe.
Mhm. Yes, it is.
It,
Yeah. And it's like, once you kind of open up that door just a little bit, it's like, oh my God, everything just comes flying out. You're like, where did all this come from? And I remember just, kind of, because I never realized I had an inner child when I first started working with a therapist. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I have no inner child. Like, what are you talking about? And then once I figured out what that was, I started giving a voice to him, just like the floodgates opened up. It was just incredible.
yeah.
But yeah, and so let's kind of transition a little bit too. And
Mm.
so you are a spiritual coach and a Reiki master. So do you incorporate both of these strategies with your clients, or is it some prefer more Reiki versus different approaches to spiritual life coach?
Yeah, I've got a blend of things that I do. So with my coaching package, I incorporate things like soul plan reading. So really finding out what people's challenges have been or are, and what their talents are, which is usually the big one. People understanding actually they've got these big, huge talents that they're here to share, and where they're going, their life purpose. So I incorporate that. I incorporate the soul transformation. One of my clients, when I see her, we start off with some Reiki just to calm her down, her body down, and So it really, really depends on the need of the client at the time, and that can change, session to session. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mixture. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and actually, this kind of, because I mean, I've had several Reiki masters on my show over the time, and we kind of like, I've had all the intentions of actually diving into Reiki a little bit, but I've never gotten there because, we kind of go off on different, tangents and topics. But maybe for those who are not familiar with the term Reiki, or they've heard of it, but they're not exactly sure what it is, maybe you can explain a little bit how Reiki works and exactly what it is.
Okay, so it's the universal energy. Everything's got energy that's around us. So, whether it's in the food or the water or just where you're sitting at this particular moment, there is a vibration going on. And with Reiki, it's a very, well, it's dated back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. And Yusui was the founder of it, but he actually didn't want it to be named. It didn't actually have a name until much later. And he used to work with people. It's all about personal development. And that's why what he used to do, he was acknowledged and liked by I'm going to say the elders, but that within the community, because he was actually using ancient or old systems, and that it was just an energy that he was using. So they used to do journaling as well. And he used to work with people for 2 or 3 years, and they used to meet regularly for a few hours or a day or whatever. And he would get them. It would be meditation and things like that. So the symbols came in at a later point. I mean, I can go in. I'm just going to condense this right down. So the symbols did come in at a later point, and then it went off around the world. It's attunements. The attunements are to help the student connect with the Reiki, and the Reiki is basically you're acting as a funnel. So you're taking the energy from outside and you're bringing it into your body. And there's various different levels. There's, up to 4. When I first started in 99, there were only 3 levels, but they've split it into 4 now. So you've got your Reiki 1, which is all your personal development level. It's about you and using it for yourself, family members. Reiki 2 is a practitioner level. Reiki 3 is the master level, and Reiki 4 is the master teacher level. So if you're using it as a practitioner is using, it's not their energy. They're taking the energy from the universe that's outside them, and they're just acting as a funnel and transmuting that energy into the person. And it depends how you use it. I work intuitively. At Reiki 1, I teach my students via the chakra system to use it. And then when we move to Reiki 2, a practitioner, it's more of free movement, trying to, seeing where the energy in the body is out of alignment. And you can do that by sort of running your hands up and down your legs. You might feel a bit warmer in certain areas, or cooler in certain areas, or fuzzy in certain areas. Everyone's individual. So it's the universal energy that's around us.
Yeah, and so when you work with someone using Reiki, is it something where you are working on like various stages for like a certain amount of time, or I guess basically like what's the experience of how you begin and how does it progress in terms of, are there certain levels that you need to reach before you go on to the next step?
So normally I somewhere either a half an hour session or an hour session. Mine are usually an hour session. I would do some quick, find out what's going on. And I usually, it's working on the emotional for me, because that's what I do. And I would connect in with the person, and I do a quick scan of the body and see where's out, and then just tune in. It depends. When I train, I use the scenario, because this happened to me a few years ago, and I had a client, and I was working on her just when I was at practitioner level, and I was working on her, And I was thinking, oh my word, I've got right down towards the base of the body, and I've still got something like 40 minutes to go. And all of a sudden, I knew where the energy was required, and the bottom half of the body was where it was needed. So it's tuning in and just trusting, really. I can't explain it. It's very unique. I've had people that have turned up and that have been having physio for years or months on a certain area, and I'll just say something to them and work on it, and it's cleared it. So everyone's different, and a lot of this stuff that we turn up with, physical ailments, have actually come from an emotional place. So, I was working with someone who had really bad back issues, and all I said to her was, where are you not feeling supported in your life? And she had one treatment. She came back. She said, I've only come back because I don't really understand what happened. So she said, everything's gone. The back's, and she came back for another treatment. It was nice to have the energy, and that, it helps in all sorts of areas, stress. But with the physical stuff, it's usually there's an emotional imbalance somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating when you like you just mentioned, that client who came in with back problems, and all you did was ask one question about how they're not supported, and suddenly, they had this revelation, or they worked through it during your session, and it was like kind of everything kind of got released. And I know. Yeah. When you talk with someone, and sometimes, I mean, it's very common, obviously, to have, emotions can cause, physical pain, of course. And obviously trauma can cause all types of chronic pain and, chronic illness. But when you can have that kind of a breakthrough where you realize that, oh my God, my back is killing me, or, I have this issue and I don't know where it came from. And then you just dive a little bit deep into, well, what areas are being troubled in my life. And then you kind of expose it and open it up. Then it's like, wow, it's like the clouds part, and you're like, oh my God, it's just, I mean, it's freeing in many ways. And I guess in the case of your client, it was like really healing.
Yeah. So it was, again, what then came up was toxic relationships and emotional abuse. And this is where I go with this, the universe just keeps sending these people, and they appear, or they come to me and say, I don't know why I found you, and they come in one area, and we end up working on other stuff. So,
yeah, and you know what? Sometimes we just can't explain why somebody comes to us, and you're like, it doesn't matter. You're here, and that's the important thing, right?
Totally, yeah. I'm not going to query it. It's just come in. There's something that I'm offering. There are lots of different therapists. Might not be suitable for one person, and suitable for another. That's why there's lots of different people around. Mm-hmm. So you'll touch on different areas or different personalities.
Yeah. All right. And so last question is, so is Reiki something where you can, or is it advisable to do it, say remotely, or is it better to do it in person?
Well, that is a huge question, because I actually think it's really powerful. The same with my coaching as well. And some other therapies that I do, soul transformation therapy I do as well. I think it's really powerful distance. I don't think Reiki has been, people understand it. I mean, and even I don't. I think it's a very, very powerful tool, and it is a very, very gentle energy, and it's one that I always say to people. Years ago, I used to do a lot of body work, massage and reflexology, and people would say, oh, I'm really thinking, I really want to get into this. And I always say, go and start with Reiki, because it starts to lift things, peel bits back. But it's equally on both spectrums. You can get something from being with someone, or distance healing. Distance healing is amazing. It's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think, in today's world, with so many people working with, coaches and therapists through the internet now, and through Skype and through apps and everything, any way that we can use whatever modality we believe in the most to help somebody remotely. It's just, I mean, all of my clients are remote. I mean, every single one of them, you know, I mean, I do some group work now and then locally with, you know, in person, but 98% of what I do is online. And so, you know, we know for sure that coaching can obviously be done online. And of course, now, you know, there's a lot of therapy and stuff, but to be able to do Reiki when it's a very spiritual and emotional type of practice, to be able to do it online, has to be really encouraging for people too.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And I use, I've got I use a rabbit actually, so and I tune in. So I've just for proportions, you know, front, back, heads, you know, legs, blah blah blah, arms, etc. And tune in that way. It is really powerful, really powerful. And on animals, I've had some amazing results with animals as well, distance and hands on. They react really, really well. Well, I remember doing some work with my brother's dog, and he was like, "What have you done to her?"
Yeah, right.
Because he didn't believe any of this, and he was going, "But you're, you know, I was about an hour away from him, an hour drive away from him." He's like, "But you're there, and I'm here. I just don't get it." You know, so I said, "Well, I can send you some, and you can experience it," because he was up until that point, no, you know, so I don't, you know, don't believe in any of this. And he was, again, he then kept phoning me out. I don't believe this is going on. I've got this going on, and you know, this fizzing and popping in my head, and it was amazing.
I've heard stories of the animals she's helped, and the people were like, you know, like, I feel something too, you know, and my animals, you know, whatever the issue was, but they're like, something happened to me too. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So she has to explain it to me. And I mean, I know enough about Reiki to kind of get myself in trouble. So obviously I don't teach it or anything, but I'm learning about it. And you know, I honestly had not heard of Reiki for animals until she mentioned it to me. But you know, of course you brought it up, and then it jogged my memory, and I'm like, it's just it's amazing how something so emotional and deep can work with, you know, obviously people and with animals.
Yeah, and also they don't question, so you know, they haven't got that block automatically that says, "Oh, this can't work," or "I don't understand this, and I don't think this should be working." So therefore, I'm going to, you know, put that block up. So it's
we can learn a lot from animals, right?
Well, totally. Yeah. They say look like a dog.
I know, right? Yeah. Liz, this has been super cool. I learned a lot. So why don't we wrap it up, and you can share where people can find you online, about any programs you have, you know, in case they're interested in working with you.
Yeah, so I've got the RAW coaching program, which is for emotional abuse. It was the cycle is idolization, devaluation, and discard, but it goes round and round and round. It traps you. So I've put the program together to for us to take responsibility for the part we played in allowing this to happen, and this goes back to finding the original wound and healing that. Because when I was talking to people and working with people, it was quite apparent that we gave these people chances. We saw the red flags and we let it go. We overrode our intuition. So there's a responsibility checkup and helping people heal that hurt, the rejection, the abandonment. And then I've got the ownership, which is again looking at the challenges, and I do a soul plan reading with clients at this point. We're discovering what the challenges are in our lives that we've come across, and putting stuff in place. And it goes on. So there's the acknowledgement and realignment, so that we feel complete at the end of it. And I run that for just over 3 months, because I found it's just at that 3 month part that people are making great big leaps and bounds. It's, you know, with coaching, it doesn't automatically happen straight away. Sometimes it does. I've had a few people phone me and say, "Oh, you know, does this change overnight?" So I run this 3.5 month program, and the last one is just this last catch up call at the 3.5 month part. I do the soul transformation as one off, so it's just a one off. or people can come back, but I do that. So that could be something that's holding you back at this moment. It's dealing with the emotional stuff that we're holding in our body. And I also do the soul plan readings as well. So my website is reviveyoursoul.co.uk. And there's a blog on there and various different bits and pieces, meditations and all sorts on there. And there's some information on the cycle of abuse as well. It's just something that it's just whoever you speak to has got, it's not the same story, but the cycle is exactly the same. The elements are exactly the same, and it's just draining, and you end up a shell of who you really are. And it's helping people rebuild and desensitize and take that trauma out, and get the energy back. I remember looking in the mirror and not even recognizing myself. I could not see into the eyes, and the eyes are linked to the soul. So I was everything was sucked out of me, and that's what I'm really passionate about, people understanding this cycle, because once you can see it, you can start to stop it if it starts happening again. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And yes, like stopping the cycle is such a huge part of healing, because I mean, we know that whatever we went through, whether it was emotional abuse or physical abuse or whatever it was, if we don't figure out how to stop it, it's going to be passed along from generation to generation, because, obviously, it's part of who we are. It affects, our children, and then it affects them. And, unfortunately, sometimes they can experience something that we went through. So figuring out a way to stop it, whatever that means for you, whatever method it is. And again, whether it's Reiki or it's, working with a spiritual coach or another kind of coach or practitioner, however you need to do to stop that cycle. So future generations of your family, can live free of the abuse, I think is just, it's such a critical part of being a survivor of any kind of trauma.
And that is what you just said is really crucial, because we also hold this in the DNA. So if there's something, the trauma comes through the DNA. And I've done using Reiki, actually, DNA clearing and going back, through the line, and a lot of it comes through the female. And when you actually look at the anatomy of a female, that when a female is conceived within, I can't remember whether it's at 4 months, as a fetus, she already has her eggs in place for her life, whereas a man is producing his on a daily basis, the sperm on a daily basis. So she's already taken that through. So the DNA doesn't just hold our eye color and our hair color and the skin type. It holds a lot more. So if we're not dealing with this trauma and removing it, it's affecting the generations that are coming up. And it's just having that understanding of where it comes from and finding that original wound. So a lot of this I found was abandonment for me in childhood, and an abandonment wound. And a lot of people that I've spoken to they seem to have the same thing. It seems to be this abandonment that happens. And we just carry this through. We carry repeating these patterns, and have this big thing about these patterns that go on. And it's this cycle of abuse is another pattern. Everybody that I've dealt with and spoken to has said in any particular relationship that they were in, they saw 3 times a red flag, and they overrode it. They turned their intuition off and just said, no, it's okay. It's and forgave or whatever it was, and then went head on into this toxic relationship that they ended up in. And I think if we can get this word out that what's going on in the cycle, it can help people see that and say, do you know what, I shouldn't be overriding that flag. I should be saying, no, that's not, this isn't what I want.
when you are potentially engaging in a relationship with someone, doesn't matter whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, you get that feeling in your gut that something's not right, or you see some inkling of a flag of, why did they say this, or what did they mean by that, or
Mhm.
they said something or did something that doesn't quite agree with me, but we're like, as you mentioned, sometimes we just overwrite it or we gloss over it, or we're like, it was just a one-time thing, or it's not that big of a deal. And usually if you get that kind of a feeling one time, it's going to be a big deal down the road, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's that by the time you got to the third time it's happened, or something similar has happened, or something saying this isn't right, the fourth time, your barrier has gone down so much that you don't even pick up the next. You go, oh, they've eroded that barrier. So you don't actually pick up as much, or you turn that intuition off. So I remember some of the, a couple of relationships, because I've had both emotional and physically abusive relationships I've been in, and hearing statements and thinking, I've heard this before, and this happened last time, and maybe I should have listened a bit more. I'm really, really sorry, I won't do it again, is something I heard when I was, hit, physically hit. And then I heard it in an emotionally abusive relationship. And I don't know, the empath, the healer, forgave, so it's getting that message out that, once, maybe twice, you can say, okay, maybe they didn't get it the first time. You get to 3, really, they just have no respect for you. And that's why they're ignoring what you're saying or your values or.
Yeah, I agree. And I used to always tell people, I would say, if you notice something once, it's a coincidence. 2 is a trend. 3 is a problem. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, so it is important to remember, of course, as we wrap this up here, that sometimes somebody may, say something not proper, or they may just, for lack of a better term, stick their foot in their mouth. And, so it's important to remember that if somebody does something or says something, especially early on in a relationship, no matter what it is, if it doesn't sit well with you, don't, speak up and don't let it gloss over, because if it happens once and maybe it was just an accident, or, or something that happened, depending on what it is, obviously. But if you start to see any kind of a pattern, as in, i.e. more than once, bring it up, ask them about a question, and then gauge your response off of the way that makes you feel. And then if it doesn't feel right, just get out, because you're right. The more you hang around, the more that you get used to it, and the more that you just start to forgive things.
Yeah. And I think it was that listen to your body. You summed it up so well. You're hearing something, but if it doesn't sit well within you, that's your body telling you. It's our ancient brain. Our stomach is an ancient brain. It's there to tell us this isn't right. Run away.
That's exactly right. Liz, this has been awesome. And I'd love to bring you back again, and we can talk some more about this.
Yeah, love to.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, your website is reviveyoursoul.co.uk. I'll put that in the show notes. And if anybody wants to learn more about you, they can check that out. And other than that, yes, thank you so much, Liz. It's been great.
No, thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Your Past, part of the Mental Health News Radio Network. Information shared on this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only, and is not a substitute for or supersedes professional medical help or mental health counseling. Thank you again to my sponsors, inlpcenter.org and Daily Recovery Support. I hope you'll consider checking them out, as they've joined forces to help keep the lights on here at the podcast and help Beyond Your Past reach as many as possible with a message of hope. If you'd like to learn more about working with me as your coach, or if you're curious about what life coaching is and how it might be right for you, then head on over to beyondyourpast.com and claim your free 1-hour session, where we can talk about the struggles in your life in the areas of anxiety and trauma recovery, and see if coaching might be a great fit for you. Thanks again for listening, and I do hope that you'll subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with all your friends. See you next time.